Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Amnesty International has concluded Israel's committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. This is Amnesty researcher Budur Hassan.
We have documented Israel's perpetration of 3 out of the 5 prohibited acts under the Genocide Convention since the 7th of October. These include killing members of the group, causing them serious mental or bodily harm, and inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about their physical destruction. For example, this would include the destruction of essential infrastructure, including homes, agricultural land, water and sanitation infrastructure, and infrastructure indispensable to the civilian population. They also include the mass repeated displacement under inhumane and unsanitary conditions, and they also include the deliberate obstruction of entry of life-saving supplies and aid.
Israel's intensifying its attacks on Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. An attack on an encampment in al-Mawasi, a so-called safe zone, killed at least 21 people. Survivors described a fireball that incinerated people, including mothers and their children. Palestinians who gathered to grieve the dead responded to the Amnesty report.
The time has come for the international community to move on all fronts to question and hold Israel to account for the crimes, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide crimes that it is carrying out.
The massacre in al-Mawasi was just one of multiple deadly attacks launched by Israel over the past day, killing at least 48 people overall. Attacks on the Indonesian hospital in northern Beit Lahia, which is also acting as shelter, set the facility's water tanks ablaze. Meanwhile, Israeli forces are continuing to attack southern Lebanon by air in violation of a ceasefire deal with Hezbollah. The far-right-dominated U.S. Supreme Court appears poised to uphold Tennessee's ban on gender-affirming care for transgender youth after hearing arguments in a case that could have major repercussions for transgender people across the country. Plaintiffs argue the ban is a form of sex discrimination. Transgender community members and their allies rallied in front of the Supreme Court Wednesday. This is Ethan Rice, an attorney with Lambda Legal, one of the groups representing the plaintiffs in the case.
To support trans youth and non-binary youth specifically, but really today is such an important case for our community, and really it's about the right of transgender youth to be themselves, the rights of parents and youth to be able to make medical decisions with their doctors.
After headlines, we'll speak with ACLU attorney Chase Strangeview, who yesterday argued the case before the Supreme Court, becoming the first openly trans lawyer to speak before the court. The French government has collapsed after leftist and far-right lawmakers united to oust Prime Minister Michel Barnier in a no-confidence vote Wednesday. The vote came amidst intense opposition to Barnier's budget proposal and its roughly $60 billion in spending cuts and tax increases. It's the first time France's government has fallen to a no-confidence vote since 1962. French President Emmanuel Macron is addressing the nation later today. He would ask Barnier to stay on as caretaker prime minister until he names a successor. It's the latest defeat for the embattled Macron, who faced fierce backlash after selecting the conservative Barnier as prime minister in September instead of a progressive politician, despite a leftist coalition winning the most votes in July's snap parliamentary elections. Mathilde Panot of the Progressive France Unbowed Party called on Macron to step down following the vote.
We are ready to govern on a program of change. Emmanuel Macron must go, and we want to show any moment, and we will demonstrate that another world is always possible, and that the only sovereign in this country remains the people and them alone.
South Korean police are investigating President Yoon Suk-yeol for insurrection after his declaration of martial law Tuesday. Under South Korean law, anyone found guilty of leading an insurrection may receive a death sentence. Yoon was forced to revoke his martial law order 6 hours after announcing it amidst widespread opposition and mass protest. Opposition lawmakers Thursday introduced a motion to impeach Yoon, which is set to be voted on Saturday. This is lawmaker Kim Sung-won addressing the National Assembly.
It was a moment of military treason that we considered disappeared in the history. He has committed an unforgivable sin.
Syria's government says it's withdrawn its forces from Hama as armed opposition fighters began entering the key Syrian city. It's another major blow to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad after opposition fighters last week seized Aleppo, Syria's second-largest city. Armed groups now control much of Syria's northern Idlib province, where civil defense workers report Russian airstrikes on 5 healthcare facilities have killed at least 18 people and injured nearly 3 dozen others. Doctors and paramedics at Aleppo University Hospital say they're suffering severe shortages of personnel and medical supplies.
Hospitals are often put out of service. There's a lack of staff and equipment. All hospitals are out of service due to the bombing of the hospitals.
In the Republic of Georgia, authorities arrested a main opposition leader as mass anti-government protests stretched into their second week. Nika Gavaramia, head of the Coalition for Change, was one of multiple opposition figures to be detained Wednesday amidst government raids on homes and offices. The protests were set off after the ruling Georgian Dream Party suspended its bid to join the European Union. Meanwhile, Georgia's pro-EU president has refused to recognize Georgian Dream's recent victory in parliamentary elections and has called for new elections. In Belgium, a court had found the Belgian government guilty of crimes against humanity for the forced removal of 5 mixed-race children from their Congolese mothers during Belgium's colonization of their native country. The 5 women, now in their 70s, were abducted from their mothers between 1948 and 53 and placed in Catholic institutions. Thousands of mixed-race children endured the same state-sponsored seizure and mistreatment. One of the plaintiffs, Simone Golula, said the historic legal victory had restored her dignity. In other news from Belgium, a new law has gone into effect granting sex workers unprecedented labor rights, including sick days, health insurance, maternity pay, pensions, and the ability to set the terms of their services with clients. Employers of sex workers must ensure workplace protections and pass background checks. The changes come after years of organizing by Belgium's sex worker union. Back in the United States, Donald Trump has named former UC Irvine economist Peter Navarro as his top trade advisor. Navarro served as White House advisor in the first Trump administration before serving 4 months in a federal prison earlier this year after he was convicted of contempt of Congress for refusing to comply with a subpoena from the House January 6 committee. Navarro had boasted of working to delay Congress's count of the 2020 election results to buy time for Trump to reverse Joe Biden's victory. In more transition news, Trump's nominated Paul Atkins as head of the Securities and Exchange Commission, reprising his role under the George W. Bush administration. Atkins is co-chair of the cryptocurrency lobbying group, the Token Alliance, and has advocated against heavily regulating the rapidly growing cryptocurrency market. Trump has nominated billionaire tech entrepreneur and pilot Jared Isaacman to head NASA. Isaacman is a close ally of SpaceX CEO Elon Musk and has spent much of his personal fortune bankrolling private missions to space. President-elect Trump will appoint former Georgia Republican senator and top Trump campaign contributor Kelly Loeffler to lead the Small Business Administration. Trump has asked Fiserv CEO Frank Bessignano to head the Social Security Administration, has tapped his longtime lawyer David Warrington to serve as the White House counsel. Meanwhile, Trump will seek to nominate a new leader of the Internal Revenue Service to replace Biden appointee Daniel Werfel, who spent just 2 years on the job. Trump will instead seek Senate confirmation of former Missouri Congressmember Billy Long as IRS commissioner. Long's nomination comes as Republicans are seeking to prevent the Treasury Department from unlocking $20 billion in IRS enforcement money that's been effectively frozen during budget negotiations. A U.S. Justice Department investigation has found Memphis police guilty of using excessive force and discriminating against black people. The probe was launched after the killing of Tyree Nichols, a 29-year-old black father who was beaten to death by police during a 2023 traffic stop. The Memphis Police Department says it will not agree to federal oversight and reforms until it can review and challenge the Justice Department's report. A manhunt is underway here in New York after a shooter killed the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson, outside a Manhattan hotel Wednesday morning in what police said was a brazen targeted attack. The gunman shot Thompson as he was entering the New York Hilton Midtown for United Healthcare's annual investor conference. The motive for Thompson's killing has not been confirmed, but his widow told NBC News he'd received threats due to, quote, a lack of coverage. Police say they found shell casings with the words depose, deny, and defend inscribed on them. The words delay, deny, defend are known as the 3 Ds of the health insurance industry. And Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield in Connecticut, New York, and Missouri has announced it'll stop paying for patients' anesthesia for the full length of surgeries if the procedure goes over an allotted time limit. Donald Arnold, president of American Society of Anesthesiologists, said, quote, this is just the latest in a long line of appalling behavior by commercial health insurers looking to drive their profits up at the expense of patients and physicians, he said. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report.